I'm now in the strange position of handing over to myself, so I'm just going to share the screen and hopefully somebody will shout that you can see it. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes, Liz, it's perfect.
Brilliant, thank you. So, so just to introduce myself again, very briefly. So I'm Liz Price, I'm Chair of Chairs, I'm Deputy Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Sustainability at Manchester Met. And I'm going to provide a brief overview of the ES3 benchmark in relation to sustainability, following on from what Sian has talked about, and also signpost the QAA and Advanced HE Education for Sustainable Development guidance to support embedding education for sustainable development in the curriculum. So just bear with me while I find my button to click through my slides. There it is. Okay. So as Sian very eloquently said, just by way of brief signposting, the new ES3 benchmark includes the introduction of the cross-cutting theme of education for sustainable development and the imperative of considering the interactions between social, economic and environmental components of sustainable development. The new benchmark states that all graduates will have appropriate knowledge of the main aspects of ES3 and their relationship to sustainable development. So I'm sure many colleagues are already familiar with this, but for those who aren't or would like a refresher, what is Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD? Well, the application of sustainable development in the higher education sector takes place through Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD, which is the process, as the benchmark states, of creating curriculum structures and subject relevant content to support and enact sustainable development. And as stated in the UNESCO 2019 definition that is used in the QAA documents, ESD is holistic and transformational education, which addresses learning content and outcomes, pedagogy and the learning environment. It achieves its purpose by transforming society. And I've popped the link into the definition there in the bottom of the slide, but it's just to note that UNESCO have actually updated their definition. They updated it in 2022. So if you look for that definition, you won't be able to find it anymore. But the key messages do remain the same. They've just rephrased it slightly with slightly different emphasis. So what does the new ES3 benchmark require in terms of sustainability? Well, the new ES3 benchmark emphasises that courses should allow students to reflect upon their learning and the application of their knowledge for a sustainable society. And I'd like to take the opportunity to briefly highlight how ESD is absolutely interwoven throughout the ES3 statement, as Sian described. So, for example, all graduates will have appropriate knowledge and skills of the main aspects of ES3, including the concepts and applications of sustainable development and systems thinking. And ES3 subjects have sustainability at their core. Teaching, learning and assessment should be clearly underpinned by education for sustainable development to achieve positive graduate outcomes. And the benchmark standards for personal and professional skills include that graduates with an honours degree in ES3 appreciate the need to act and work in an ethical and sustainable manner. And again, as Sian clarified, the benchmark also highlights that to support the inclusion of sustainable development within the ES3 disciplines, users should refer to the QAA and Advanced HE Education for Sustainable Development guidance to address teaching, learning and assessment for sustainable development, key competencies, learning outcomes, and also again assessment within the curricula. So that's all very well, but how can this QA and Advanced HE ESD guidance support you in what you're doing? Well, we're delighted there's been quite a lot of uptake for the guidance already. We've learned from the QAA that this is the most downloaded document from the QAA's portfolio. So there's a lot of interest in this. And the ESD guidance is really intended to serve as a reference point for use in curriculum design, delivery, and review. So section 1 offers an introduction to ESD through the development of relevant skills, knowledge, and competencies. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are discussed as the contemporary policy framing for sustainable development when focusing on designing ESD into curricula. Section 2 discusses how to get started with ESD. It recognises how ESD can reinforce other institutional objectives, which can be very useful when you're trying to gain support for embedding it in your curricula. Section 3 focuses on teaching and learning and assessment approaches for ESD. This section introduces the 8 UNESCO key competencies for sustainability that I've popped on the slide here. So these are systems thinking, anticipatory, critical thinking, strategic, collaboration, integrated problem solving, normative, and self-awareness. And these are grouped into ways of thinking, ways of practicing, and ways of being. Section 3 also suggests course and module learning outcomes for ESD and provides guidance about developing learning environments to support education for sustainable development. And I'll say a little bit more about approaches in my next slide. Section 4 offers an annotated reference list and a resource list as well. And I've popped some resources and links on the slide that hopefully might be useful. So the QAA Advanced HE guidance recognises that there are many ways in which ESD may be achieved, and it's not prescriptive at all about delivery. However, I thought it would be helpful to highlight a tool that I found useful in this respect to help perhaps give you a taster of how you might implement this in your own programmes. And this is the Co-Design's ESD framework, which is based in part on the QAA Advanced HE ESD guidelines. So it draws quite heavily from the guidance and is well integrated with the guidance. So the Co-Design's ESD framework integrates 3 key elements in a practical toolkit. And these are available through Creative Commons if you're interested. So firstly, as I've shown here, the UNESCO key competencies for sustainability in terms of ways of thinking, ways of practicing, and ways of being are central to this framework. Secondly, learning objectives for the SDGs, targeting cognitive or head, socio-emotional or heart, and behavioural or hands domains to engage students in transformative educational experience. And just to explain a bit more, the cognitive domain comprises knowledge necessary to better understand and implement the SDGs. The socio-emotional domain includes social skills that allow learners to collaborate to promote the SDGs. And finally, the behavioural domain describes action competencies in relation to the SDGs. And it's really important that all these domains are encapsulated in learning, teaching, and assessment. And then thirdly, how do you go about doing this? So transformative pedagogies and teaching methods that support participation and collaboration, problem orientation, inter and transdisciplinarity, and the linking of formal and informal learning. Now, if you'd like to
Sorry, you've just got a minute left. Thank you.
That's fine. If you'd like to learn more about the toolkit, please do take a look at the link at the bottom of the slide. And then finally, I hope I provided a useful, very brief overview with links to resources that you can consider in your own context. And next presentation from Georgie will build on this to discuss implementation and how ESD can be embedded in curricula. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please do pop them in the chat.